There is a Morelato car I'd quite like to see, and that would be our race leader Richard Westbrook. Here he is then, final lap for him. Oh, Westbrook will probably wet himself laughing watching the video of this race, I would think. The exploits of all his championship rivals, all contriving to trip each other up as much as humanly possible. Could hardly have handled it worse, could they, if they'd just jumped out of their cars on the grid and started punching each other. Richard Westbrook has made it all look very straightforward from pole position. A hard-fought pole position. He was only 0.14 of a second ahead of David Salins. But in Super Cup, that's quite a decent margin. He has romped to victory here in race 1 at Indianapolis. It's his first race win in Indy. Uwe Altzen, critically, despite that injured tyre, takes second, and Kelvin Burt on the drag to the line takes third position and will stand on the podium in Indianapolis, having started in 16th place for this first of 2 races in the championship here in North America. Well. So, we lost David Salins. He was punted off when Uwe Altzen lost control behind Patrick Heisman, who thumped off Salins. We also lost Heisman as a result of that. I can't believe that Altzen's tyre held together. Full marks for Michelin this time for that one, that's for sure. We lost Richard Lietz and Christian Menzel when the two of them drove each other into the pit wall. Mark Benz's car retired for reasons that we don't know. Alessandro Sampedri outbraked himself going past teammate Patrick Heisman, stalled in the middle of the road. He was collected by Hannes Neuhauser, who couldn't avoid him. Ian Baas, who finished 10th, who started 10th, was in 4th place at the line. Philip Beira in 5th. Robert Vandenberg also managed to finish. But from the top 10 starters, 1, 2, 3 made it to the finish. And from behind them, Kelvin Burt from 16th position made it up into 3rd spot on the grid. Well, copybook performance from Richard Westbrook. Blotted copybooks from everyone else in his championship contenders. Kelvin Burt, though, producing the goods from 16th on the grid to race into 3rd position. 38-year-old from Banbury, certainly showing that he's got the pace to cut it in this Porsche Super Cup still.
Hello and welcome to live coverage now from Indianapolis as we get ready for the second Super Cup race of the weekend here on this classic track. I'm Ben Edwards with you for the chance to see whether Richard Westbrook can make it 2 out of 2 here this weekend. The British driver now comfortably in command of the Super Cup point standings, as he has been pretty much from the second round of the series at Imola when he took victory there. It's been a brilliant season for him so far, and yesterday worked to perfection for him because of his nearest championship rivals all tripping over themselves in their attempts to keep up with him, taking each other out, picking up penalties, and thus Richard Westbrook was able to come away, extending his lead further. He's now got a 25-point lead in the championship. Still some way to go in the series, of course, but we're coming into round 8 here at Indianapolis for the second race. 2 completely separate races here that score individually as well, and it's a different qualifying setup for this one as well. They qualified in a separate qualifying session over the weekend, and so we have an all-new grid. But it is, let me tell you, Richard Westbrook will be starting from pole position once again for this second race of the weekend. A pole position that he took actually after David Salins was penalised in qualifying. He had set his best time, in fact his second best time, under yellow flags after Menzel had gone off, and Salins therefore has been pushed back down to 3rd place on the grid, and Westbrook will start from pole with his chance of continuing to extend his lead. Now Richard Lietz here starts 2nd on the grid. The Austrian had a bit of a disaster yesterday when he actually clashed with his own teammate Christian Menzel, and they both ended up retiring from the race. So for To Limit Motorsport it was a bit of a disaster, but Richard Westbrook from pole position took the victory and made it a very comfortable win indeed. 20 points on offer to the winner of each Super Cup race, and with his major rivals, as I say, not scoring so well. Uwe Altzen picked up 10 points for 9th position. That was after he was given a 15-second penalty for his exploits in race 1. So although he finished 2nd on the road, Altzen, he was actually pushed back down to 9th place. And David Salins, nearest rival to Richard Westbrook coming into this race, well, he finished down in 10th position as a result of a bit of barging and pushing that went on earlier in the race. So Westbrook certainly in good shape. It was his 3rd win of the season as well that he took here at Indianapolis, and a great place to do it. Let's see whether he's going to be able to achieve the same here today and make it 2 out of 2. An absolutely crucial phase in the championship. Still a little way to go. They've got to compete at Manicourt in France, at Hockenheim in Germany. Also they'll race in Hungary and finish off the season at Monza in September. But there is Richard, very, very focused, concentrating totally on the task that is ahead of him here. Important to get off the line well, as he did in that race yesterday, and let's see whether he can achieve the same. Absolutely glorious conditions, as you can see once more. It's been very hot, absolutely dry over the Indianapolis weekend so far. You can see a breeze blowing across the start-finish straight, and as the countdown continues, let's take a look at the grid then. Westbrook on pole position, Richard Leeds alongside him on the front row. Then it's David Salins lining up 3rd, Uwe Altzen 4th. Zampedri, the reigning champion, 5th, ahead of Huysman, the 4-times champion, starting 6th. Beira, Neuhauser, Schrey and Benz, and Baas and Burt. Now watch out for Kelvin Burt. He finished in 2nd place yesterday, starting down in 16th position. The British driver coming into the Super Cup for only the 2nd time this year, and well, a lot of people had problems, but he was able to pick up the pieces. Richard Williams starts 13th, another British driver to keep an eye on. Vandenberg 14th, ahead of Van der Herk. Langhorn, one of the Americans, taking part as a guest driver. Bleekemolen, Imrie, Policastro, Heath, Frameworth, then Kunz, Flanagan and Sobrero towards the back. And as you can see, quite a few guest drivers coming into this race this weekend. A couple more towards the back. Al Khalifa, Pank, Chang, Becker and Menzel. Now Menzel had problems in qualifying. He's usually one of the front runners coming into this event, in fact lying in 6th place in the championship. So Christian Menzel in the yellow to limit car with an awful lot of work to do from the back. Looking there at David Salins. Now for David Salins, who won here at Indianapolis both races in 2005, yesterday proved to be a bit of a disaster. He was running 2nd to Westbrook, but then Altzen clouted the back of Huysman, who clouted into Salins, damaging the car quite considerably, and that meant he ended up down in 10th place. So instead of Salins coming to Indianapolis and hoping that it would make a resurgence really in his championship chase this year, it's actually proved to be completely the contrast, and he's got to try and get a decent result and try and beat Westbrook here today to keep his championship hopes really properly alive. They are still alive, but they're all really looking for Westbrook to have a non-finish now to put them all back on equal terms. There's the man who won at Silverstone a couple of weeks ago, Uwe Altzen. It was a dominant drive supporting the British Grand Prix from Uwe Altzen. He not only took pole position in the win, he also had fastest lap. And Altzen coming into this one in 3rd place in the points. A little way behind Salins, but still in with a shout and in with an opportunity. And the American fans will certainly be cheering on their man Ian Boss, who finished 3rd yesterday. Starring performance from the 23-year-old, who won his class in a Porsche in the Daytona 24-hour race at the beginning of the year, and partly like Kelvin Burt, picking up places as a result of problems for others, but nonetheless, best result for an American in a Super Cup race here at Indianapolis. 3rd place for Ian Boss, and he was passed by Kelvin Burt right at the end of that first race yesterday. So Kelvin took 2nd, Boss took 3rd. Philippe Beira finished in 4th place ahead of Michael Bleekemolen and Robert Vandenberg. But I expect some of the more regular front runners to perhaps not make such a meal of it as they did yesterday, and let's hope we get a good, clean and tight race up at the front end of the grid. So just beginning to clear that grid area now. 16 laps of this Indianapolis circuit coming up, and as we know, there's more full throttle here. They're on the full throttle for longer here at Indianapolis than they are on any other circuit on the calendar, thanks to that huge long run out onto the banking and all the way down this massive start-finish straight. The 400 horsepower engine really working hard for its living. So 16 laps, a total of 67 kilometers the distance, and we're going to see whether Richard Westbrook is going to be able to make it 2 out of 2. You can see Altzen just getting a little bit of heat into the Michelin tyres as they make their way down through the first couple of corners. Richard Leeds in 2nd, the yellow car, one to definitely keep an eye on as we go through this race. He's had 1 victory so far this year. It was out of luck, as I mentioned yesterday, but he was the winner at Monaco, and very much trying to get himself back into the championship chase. So watch out for Richard Leeds starting in 2nd position on the grid. Also keep an eye on a few others. Mark Benz there was very unfortunate. He was running 2nd well, if you take Uwe Altsen's penalty into account, he was running second yesterday and pulled off right towards the end of the race, so he was entirely out of luck. Very, very unfortunate, and failed to score any points at all. He'll be coming up through from a little further down this time, see whether he can make some progress. Another one who was out of luck yesterday, starting in 8th place here today, Hannes Neuhauser. He was the one that collected Alessandro Zampedri early on in the race. Zampedri went for a move on his teammate Huysman, spun across the grass at the first corner, and poor old Neuhauser was the next one through and managed to clout straight into the back of Zampedri's car. But Neuhauser starting in 8th place, ex-Formula 3 racer into his first season. Interested spectator there, Jenson Button, keeping a close eye on British driver Richard Westbrook, but also probably more so on Richard Williams. His mate Richard Williams in this race, and not doing a bad job either in the race yesterday. He finished in 8th place. He's qualified 13th for this one, and Richard Williams and Jenson Button go back a long way when they were racing in karts together, and Jenson always keen to keep an eye on his progress. He was actually at Thruxton supporting Richard at a round of the British Carrera Cup a few weeks ago, and it's great to see him supporting him here again at Indianapolis. A little bit easier when he's here racing himself anyway, but definitely he'll be cheering Richard Williams on from 13th position on the grid. Watching them still making their way around, we'll see whether Patrick Huysman can achieve anything. He was involved in that little bit of a fracas between himself, Altzen, and David Salins in yesterday's race. A former winner of the race here back in 2003, Patrick Huysman, 4 times a champion. Hasn't really had a shining season, certainly not by his standards anyway, and he's actually yet to win a race in the 2006 Super Cup. So a little bit of a surprise that Patrick Huysman definitely perhaps overdue a victory, but to do that he's going to have to fight his way through a little bit. He's starting back in 6th position on the grid. He's got his own teammate Alessandro Zampedri in 5th place, and this is a track that Zampedri loves. Zampedri himself, defending champion, yet to win a race this year, but this Indianapolis circuit, he was based here at Indianapolis for many years when he was racing in the United States in single-seaters, so he loves this place. Raced in the Indy 500 several times, and he would just love to get a decent finish here today. Last year it was really a turning point in his championship, and although he didn't win the races, he had a great weekend, and it put him on target for winning the title, which of course he went on to do. Here we go then, lining up onto the starting positions, and we're getting ready now for a very full field of Super Cup cars here at Indianapolis to start the second race of the weekend, round number 8 of the championship. And will Richard Westbrook, the British driver, hoping to become the first British driver to win the Super Cup Championship outright, will he make it 2 out of 2 here this weekend? Pressure on now. Let's see whether he's going to be able to do it. Last few cars, still a number of cars moving into position, so there's a bit of a pause, a bit of a wait for those guys sitting up on the front row before they get the opportunity to build the revs and drop the clutch. Westbrook on the right in the blue and white car. It's Richard Leitz alongside him in the yellow car on that front row. Watch out for Uwe Altzen and David Salins on the second row. Red lights are coming on, the short interval, and then we'll be away, and Richard Westbrook lights up the rear tyres, gets a very good start, brilliant traction, good start from Westbrook. Altzen squeezing through the middle in second, trying to get past David Salins, and I think the experienced German has done it, but Salins in the green, black and white car on the outside, trying to reclaim second in the first corner. Westbrook a bit deep into that first bend, but he makes it safely, and Altzen and Salins absolutely banging door handles through turns 1 and 2, and it's David Salins who emerges in second place. They've hit each other, Salins and Altzen, 2 of the championship favourites coming into the season certainly, and winners this year, but contact there. And we've got more disaster behind as well, as maybe other cars got caught up in that incident, and several cars off there. Patrick Flanagan is one of them, so is Simon Sobrero, who went out of yesterday's race, and so is Christian Menzel. Well, remember I was telling you Menzel had to come from the back. I'm afraid his race is all over before it even started virtually. He's made it all the way to turn 3, and Westbrook again has made the break thanks to the shenanigans going on behind him. Richard Westbrook said, "Thank you guys, I'm going to be out of here if I possibly can." And now we're looking back at Philippe Beira in the number 11 car, looking back from Richard Leitz. Now Leitz of course was on the front row with Richard Westbrook, but Whether he's going to have the opportunity to challenge Westbrook, I'm not too sure, because Westbrook made a good break. Safety car is out though, and that of course does mean they all close up. No, Leitz actually lost a lot of ground on that first lap. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th place for Richard Leitz. So Leitz didn't get a very good first lap at all, and this is the debris that has been left behind by the accident down there at turn 3. And whether that was involved in the initial incident, I don't know. There was a contact between Alton and David Salens, and I think Salens' car is the first one that we can see at the bottom of the picture there. David Salens left stranded, marooned out on circuit. Alton was able to rejoin, but the other cars were much further down the grid, and whether they bunched up because everyone was on the brakes and then hit each other, or whether it was a separate incident, very difficult to tell. You can see the amount of water that's come out of the car on the right there, Salens' car. The radiators have been taken out. The water cooling liquid has ended up all over the tarmac. Meanwhile, there's the other cars are all on the grass on the inside, but there are lots of bits of plastic and bodywork and all sorts all over the place there. So safety car on track, and the laps will tick by. We've had the first of the 16 laps. Westbrook in front, the two Walter Lechner cars behind him of Huisman and Zampedri, and there is David Salens, currently running second in the championship. What a huge opportunity this is for Richard Westbrook to further cement himself out in the lead of this series. This is another big break for Richard Westbrook, and this Indianapolis weekend is turning out to be a stunning weekend for him, but not for these guys, for the Cadillac Racing team, for David Salens' team, his girlfriend there in the background as well. This is proving to be a nightmare of a weekend. He finished in 10th place yesterday after there was contact, and now look, this is what he thinks of Alton. He was complaining about Alton yesterday. Alton locked up, and look at Salens, absolutely distraught with what he sees as Alton's tactics. Difficult to tell. We'll have to have another look at it if we get a chance to see exactly what we think in terms of whose fault it was. But David Salens is in no doubt, within his own mind at least, that it was Uwe Alton's fault. And there's the damage to Alton's. Now that was the contact with Salens. Now, I wonder if he's got away with that. The radiator's in the front there, but I can't see any liquid coming from the front of that Porsche. I think he may well have got away with it in terms of not rupturing a radiator. What it might do, of course, is mean that the car overheats as we go through this race. Still very warm. Now, let's take a look. Westbrook makes a great start. Richard Leitz in the yellow car, not brilliant away. Alton dives down the middle there. That's the initial contact between Alton and Salens, but not really a big problem. Leitz dropping down to 4th place. In fact, probably even into 5th place as they turn into the first corner. Then it's Alton and Salens side by side. Alton pops over the curb a little bit, no problem. Still side by side through the first corner. Let's just take a look. This was the onboard view with Salens. That was the contact. Alton tried to nip up the inside there. Well, how far alongside was he? We couldn't see him on that onboard camera, but that's what caused Salens out. That's what then went wrong. Menzel was trying to go around the outside of a number of cars from the back, and this was Jenson Button's reaction as he watched what was going on. And well, there was certainly plenty to see, and I think it might well mean that his mate Richard Williams has gained a few places as a result of some of the cars in trouble on that first lap. But Neuhauser coming through, just weaving around in the blue and white car. He's certainly made a bit of progress. Leitz has made a terrible start, so he's way down the order. Philippe Beyra then coming through. Kelvin Burt not too far back, and Kelvin Burt's just inside the top 10. We can see the top 8 listed there. Leitz down in 6th position, then Beyra, and then Michael Schrei, then Kelvin Burt. So he's in 9th place with Ian Boss, the American,